How you doing?
Good.
Listen, thank you for joining today, the show. It's been a while. ¿Cómo está? ¿Todo bien?
Bien, bien, acá tranquila. There's a lot of snow. It's like about like maybe almost 3 feet of snow outside.
Oh my
So
God,
con
no,
frío.
that's crazy. So, talk to our viewers a little bit of what you do, and then we'll go into the questioning.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Joy Valerie, Joy Valerie Carrera, and I have a blog called buildwithjoy.co. And basically, how I've now been describing myself is essentially a COO on demand. And, everyone's a CEO, like anybody can start a business and has amazing ideas, but it's really about the execution, right? Like the behind the scenes. Like, even actually today my TikTok went viral and I like blew up overnight and people are like, "Oh my God, it's overnight." And I'm like, "Yes, but you didn't see like all of the little pieces that goes behind everything, right? Like the tools that you use, the strategies that you implement."
Give us specifics of the tools that you're talking about. Are you talking about branding? You're talking about marketing? Are you talking about
Well, I
e-commerce?
think when in general, and when you're thinking about a business, right? Like you have a business idea, and then it's just really about breaking it up, right? All the strategy and logistical parts of it, right? That's really what I focus on in helping people break it up, and then leveraging software and tech to be able to do it easier, more cost effective, and increase overall your money, right? Like make money. That's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. So it's interesting. That's why I wanted to talk about this is because COVID has should have opened a lot of people's eyes on how to restructure their company. And we're talking about, let's just say, chefs, catering companies who want to launch out their products, who want to launch out a catering company, want to buy a food truck, or Latino winemakers, right? How important is it what you do to their business?
I think, there's always the product, right? Like you always need a business to actually have a product, like a physical thing, but then you need people to actually know about it, right? So then I kind of focus on the sales operations, right? Like how do we get people to know about it? And then when they do know about it, how do we make it easy for them to buy and retain those customers? So thinking about the tools that go into reaching those customers, right? So if we're thinking about social media marketing, if we have a blog, like someone that's a winemaker or has wines, you might want to educate your potential client like, hey, these are the wines that we have, this is what goes into it, and trying to reach the right people. Say maybe you're in Miami, you want to make sure you get folks in Miami, but then what happens next, right? Like they come into the store, where do we get our wine, right? Those are the little pieces that you also need to think about, like what accounting software are we using, right? Like how are we getting our orders out, like where are they ordering from, because now in COVID, maybe we need to be on Yelp, and
Because you know
that's how they
why?
do their
Look,
transactions.
I think a lot of people think it's just taking nice pictures, uploading them with your contact information. And I think
Right.
it's kind of like it's just one sided. You're fishing. If you don't catch a fish, you don't have anything. What you're creating is a net, a
Yeah.
COO, a mobile COO, right?
Yeah. And really I think, people are like, "Oh, well, you do marketing and content." And I'm just like, that's the last piece of it, right? Like first you have to think about your actual business operations, because say all of a sudden, like for example, right? Like I went viral literally today and I made a bunch of sales. And the thing is, a lot of people would just be like, "Oh my God, I went viral." Like, what are you going to do? It's like thinking about, oh, okay, we had a whole bunch of people coming into, our store and we have no inventory, right? Or we don't know how to actually get those customers. So if you're thinking about like a wine business, right? Like, what if all of a sudden you run an ad campaign or a marketing campaign and it's absolutely gorgeous and you don't have wine, right? Or you haven't figured out like, where are my orders coming in from? When's the next delivery
So
shipment?
you do target ad. You also do target radius. Like if I
Yeah,
were to say,
yeah, but
hey,
I mainly focus on business operations and then lead generation, right? So first we need to make sure that your business is, your foundation is set, right? That we know like how, and essentially focusing on the revenue side of things, right? Like
yeah,
how much are we making? Where are profit margins? Oh, okay, can we even like, should we now focus on scale? I think advertising is when you're thinking scale now, right? Like, okay, I need to reach new customers and clients, And that's what really like where we start focusing on the digital side of things, right? So that we can attract more people and make sure like there's actually a return on that investment, right? Because once you start thinking about your digital strategy, you need to spend time making content. Maybe you want to hire somebody. And there's also like a lot of tools to do targeted advertising and
Yeah.
whatnot. But I do think right now, especially, there's everyone like already before COVID, 80% of like of website hits were coming from mobile, right? And now we're like bored at home. So what is everyone doing? They're on their phones, they're looking up YouTube videos, they are learning about things through the internet, and that's learning about new products. And I think that's a really good avenue for folks to take advantage of because there's still so many platforms and so many ways to tell people about what you're doing without having to spend yet on advertising, right? And
I like that. Good point. That's a good tip.
yeah, definitely, especially, like tools like TikTok, like a podcast, right? Like maybe you do have a wine store and you're just like, okay, let's start a podcast or let's start a blog where we're going to talk about like, hey, what's our favorite wines? You tell the story of what it is that you're selling, right? So I think that's
Because
also the other
people
thing.
prefer stories over commercials.
Yes, exactly. The best type of commercials is the ones that tell the story, right? When you think about, if you think about Pepsi or when not Coca-Cola, right? They had the Christmas one every year, and it's just like, oh, there's a cute little bear, and it goes like that's the story that they're telling. Like, oh, this cute little bear is like really thirsty and it needs a Coca-Cola, right? But the best type of advertising is the one that tells the story, right? Where you feel relating, like you feel like you relate, right? So maybe you're just like, oh, there's just like Joe Schmo's wine business, or there's Armando's wine business and it's family run. It is based out in LA, and they have this whole podcast where they actually like help you decide what wine you should have. That's something that someone's going to be really excited to tell their friends about, right? Because they're
You
just
make it sound so easy. I'm glad that we got today on this podcast Zoom
gonna
to catch up. And so tell us how you got into you having your own business doing this.
So I come from, I have like a very interesting background, I guess. I come from advertising tech. But before that, I was working in nonprofit in social impact. So my mission has always been to try to figure out how we serve our communities, but also how we profit, right? Because I grew up low income, and like you don't want to be in the pobreza, right? You get tired, and I was like, this is not. I'm not about this. Like no being humble nonsense. This is just like trickery. And so I was trying to figure it out. And I was like, okay, I love what I'm doing. I'm helping people, but it's also a lot of work and I'm not being compensated. So,
Okay, that
yeah,
is so key. One, no humbleness needed anymore. Two, you're doing a lot of work, social impact, but you got to make money out of this. I think that is the breaking point where more people like us should be helping others people thinking it's okay to think you want to make money because it's not about
yes,
the money. It's not about the money because you can, as Joe Biden says, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? You can do good and make money. And the reason we want money is to provide options for ourselves and our families. You get what I'm saying?
right. Yes, because I think that's the hard shift to do, right? Especially that's the hardest thing that I encounter, folks. It's not just like, okay, I need to increase sales or whatever. It's more just like I feel like guilty, right?
Yeah,
Or
because
if they start making profit.
our parents instilled that in us, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like I kind of find it. I don't want to come off the wrong way. It kind of bugs me a little bit when people will find a story more meaningful because someone chooses to do something for free. Well, why isn't going to college and starting a business and making a lot of money for you can have options for your kids to go to college and all? Why isn't that story as inspiring as well? Right? Why does it
Right.
always have to be the philanthropy? And I think Latinos, our parents teach us, hey, hijita or hijo, no es eso. Hay que hacer lo que uno le gusta, because, all this kind of, I'm like, okay, I get it. But I think at a young age, we tell people, go get a job that you like. There's nothing wrong with that. You're making money and you like what you do, right?
Right. And even if you do love what you do, right? I think that's another thing. You see a lot of artists and they're just living this starving artist life that you don't need to live, right? And then there's just like this shame in making money. And I think especially when it comes to like Latinos, I think this is like, I mean, this is could be a whole conversation on its own,
Yeah.
but it's really like a factor of colonialism, right? Like that was such a great way to keep us oppressed, right? That it was just like, oh, el pobre like will inherit the earth. And it's like, how convenient. If you stay poor, you go to heaven, right? While the rest of us get rich and steal your gold.
And it's a
Like, I'm
bad
not
thing,
about
right?
that life.
So we'll go into it, and that's why I like about when we reconnect. These are different topics that I just think they need to be heard, because if I hear a lot of topic on that side, and the oppression and how we got to that, that's good. It's kind of cool, but I want to know how I get out of that. I want to talk to people who are making money. Kind of when we're talking right now, you're gonna say, hey, after this call, what are you doing for business? What's your next move? What's your next step? And we have to kind of celebrate businesses the way we celebrate gender reveal parties, right?
Yes.
And we have to have more Latinos collaborating, and I mean that in a good way. But let's get, that's another 2 or 3 episodes. But right now, what made you say, hey, I'm going to be this mobile COO from the experiences that I've had, and how have you had success in it?
Well, so I've started working more one-on-one with small businesses, right? And doing my workshops and really helping people figure out the nuts and bolts of it, right? Because you have a great idea and you know what you need to do, but you don't know how to do it, right? Or how to set up systems to do it efficiently, especially as a business owner, or if you are the person in charge, you usually are wearing like seven different hats and doing seven different things
Yeah.
and being very reactionary. So you're just like, okay, I'm putting out all the fires here versus, I'm, trained as an engineer. I studied chemical engineering and international studies. So I have that like mindset of like, how do people work and how do we kind of reverse engineer everything that we're doing and make it into a system, right? Because I
Yep.
think that's really what you it's first, as a business owner, when you're first starting, you do need to get like dirty, right? Like down and dirty, figure out what's moving, all the moving pieces, but you need to switch into that mindset of like, okay, I'm not going to be the one doing seven different roles in a couple years from now, right? Or a couple months from now. And just think about like, okay, this is the role that I need to start forming. This is how I do it. And this is when I'm going to hire, right? And I think even more so now with technology, getting adapted to using software that would make your life easier, right? So instead of, I think I sent you, no, I didn't send you this, right? Like there's Calendly. So instead of like doing back and forth email, spending like 5 hours going back and forth, I just send you a link and you're like, hey, book it, and it puts it already in the calendar, right? So
Hmm.
finding these little things where you're just like, okay, this is what I need to go from point A to point B. This is what I need. Now, how do I make that as simple as possible? And how can I potentially automate it? Right. And if you can't automate it, you outsource or you build a process that you can outsource.
Yeah.
And that's really where I kind of come in, and you can apply that to, your internal operations, your advertising operations, your content strategy, all of it. So, I mean, I could talk about this
No, no,
forever.
I get it. No, no, and trust me, these kind of conversations are needed because it's the small business. If you look at the Latino segment, they open businesses 3 times, a lot faster than the general population. So they need to have this conversation, because it's not just, including myself, it's not just posting a picture and thinking people are going to buy your product, or putting a story up, or having an influencer wear it and think it's going to bring in sales. What I've learned from you so far is, one, you got to tell a story. Number two, before you spend money on ads, there's another alternative route. So there's really no way to have an excuse to not make it work, right?
Mhm.
What was your first aha moment when you got your first client and you kept your client? Because there's one thing getting a new client, but there's another thing getting it
Yeah.
staying, right?
So I've kind of the last year been testing back and forth, right? First I was like, okay, let me work with content creators and, helping them develop a product. And I was like, okay, this is a lot harder because of that mindset, right? Where they're like, well, I'm not a business. And I'm like, you are a business, right? Especially now when like there's a creator economy, right? Like you can monetize your influence. But then I was like, okay, they're not at the level yet where we could be like, here's a system, right? Because that's very overwhelming. So I was like, okay, I need to focus on working with small business owners. So what I did is, there's this startup method, and I think I come from the startup tech space. So the whole methodology is called like a MVP, right? Like minimum viable product. It's basically you're like phase one, right? Where you're just like, this is just what I'm testing. So I did that, right? I ran workshops and I was like, okay, let me get questions, ask for feedback from people, and then kind of started tweaking it to make sure what fit, what didn't fit. There was a time that last year, actually, about a year ago, I decided, I was like, oh, let me just do it for somebody and run their ads and their marketing. One, I undercharged myself severely. Two, I didn't realize how like their sales process was, and I was like, first we need to fix this before we even think about marketing, right? And it was a lot of like trial and error, and I
Yeah.
think that's what get discourages a lot of people, where they're just like, oh, I'm doing like the worst, right? Because it's like a lot of trial and error until you find you're like, this is what works. But also the other thing that I definitely did was, well, one, it's this book that I absolutely love, Profit First, and thinking about, okay, what's bringing me the most amount of money, right? I always kind of had that mindset, coming from tech, the 80/20 rule, right? But then also thinking about like, okay, what's taking up so much of my time, right? I was saying yes to absolutely everything. I was trying to help absolutely everyone without realizing like, okay, I need to focus on the people that can pay me, but also that I benefit more, because that way I can impact more people, right? So me working one-on-one with clients that can get me paid and aren't going to struggle with paying me and can pay me like a higher rate, that allows me to make free content that I can share for the small businesses that are just starting,
Yeah,
right?
you
And it
should
frees up
your
my
mindset.
time
Yeah.
as well, right? And that's what's, yeah, and I think that's one of the mindset things when people are just like, okay, well, like I'm making too much money, and it's like, okay, what can you do with that? You impact, right? Like, and I think that's the other thing, where it's not so much of like this money is this evil thing, but thinking, okay, if I'm making more money, that means I can have a bigger impact, and I can decide, is that going to be a positive impact or a negative impact?
Yeah,
And
but you make those choices. Kind of like make your money and then go back to your mission. Because if you focus
mhm,
on your mission, you're going to wake up 15 years later saying, "What did I do?" Right? So you
right.
make money and you make the impact negatively or positively, but you have that option. You know.
Right. And I think it is about option because, I grew up poor, and I also had like a nice, convenient, like salary job. And life was a lot easier when I wasn't stressed out about money, like mentally, physically. And that's the other thing. You want to be able to take care of yourself and your family, because then you can't take care of anybody else. You can't give back if you're not taking care of yourself and your future. That was the other thing I realized. I was like, wait, if I make more money, that's more money into my retirement. That's less that I have to work and like do things I don't like, and can focus on the things that I want to do and impact more and help more people in the long run.
You just gave one of the awesomest sound bites. One, because the whole stigma of money doesn't guarantee happiness. No one said that shit. What we're saying is when you have money, it makes life a little easier to manage the daily stress.
Yes, like especially like, it's being realistic. It's just like, wait, okay, we're in a capitalist society. If we were in a different society, maybe it would be different, but this is where we're at right now. So this is how the game plays.
No, I like it. I like it. So, where do you see yourself? Where would you like to see yourself in 2 years? The business.
2 years, I guess by that time I'm definitely just running the show. That's kind of my goal, where I'm like, okay, I have a couple of folks, I'm we're taking on clients, because I tried to build out an agency first, and that was very stressful by myself. So then I was like, okay, wait, let me reverse and start over again. So in 2 years, I would love to be running essentially like an agency, right? Like
There
the Build
you
with
go.
Joy agency, Carrera
We
Digital.
need
That's kind of what I
we
have
need
it.
we need legit agencies because in the businesses that I'm a partner in, we spend a lot of money on agencies. And I interviewed someone else who I said you should really think about the agency
Hmm.
because I know what we spend on agencies that don't deliver, on agencies that don't have people connected like you or the other guy on the streets. And so I like that idea. And if there's anything I can do to help you, I'm there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was always my goal from day one. I wanted it to be like a social impact focused agency, but I tried to do it all by myself, and I was like, I can't, take on this
Yeah.
giant
So,
project by myself.
I literally just got off the phone with another agency, and because I have this other project I'm working on, and collaborations is a way to get the things going, so you don't have everything by yourself. You
Hmm.
know, and let me tell you why you're on the right step. So Pharrell just committed $1 million to help incubate Black and Brown businesses, right? Now you've heard that from other outlets, you've heard it from other people.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, well, no, so check it out. It goes beyond that because even when I said to some Latino folks, "Hey, Pharrell committed $1 million," the first thing they said, "Oh, so what? We've done that too." Okay, so one, you got to stop that. Black and brown got to get together, right? And like,
Yes.
but we'll go to that other episode. But what he said was, "It's been done. Pitbull does this. Pitbull does that, and Fulano did this, and and nothing
Are
against
you
Pitbull."
funding the right people?
Okay, one, that's correct. Two, Pharrell said, "I can give you $1 million, but what I'm really excited about is I've partnered up with 7 different organizations to offer mentorship to scale because giving money is easy. Getting people profitable is the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of giving $1 million to the tech, they splattered it upon the most popular startup businesses for Black and brown people. So like there's nothing better than to like there's nothing worse to say, "Oh, I can graduate for this business program." You get there and it's not your business. It's like, why put me through the hoop? So going back to what you're doing is like create that agency, look at which partnerships you can form to get up and running for the first year. And then at that point, you let them know, "Hey, I'm ready to go on my own. Here's how we can do it." Or it was a year contract to begin with. So now you're sharing resources. Uh,
Yeah, I think that's even what I've done with a couple of friends, that they have their own businesses, but what I'm really seeing too, I'm like kind of an incubator to agency because I'm like I'm basically training the future CEOs that will run these ads, right? With the
well, you're gonna work
future
yourself, you're gonna work
creatives.
you're gonna work yourself out of a job when you do the right thing, right? Because you're a
Yeah,
consultant.
that is the goal.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, a mentor, when I had my agency, they were like, "The first thing I'm gonna teach you is if you do your good job, you're gonna work yourself out of a job. So at some point, you're gonna have to create something that's yours instead of consulting others, right?" All right, so let's have
Yeah,
some fun. I like your goal. I'm there to support you. Anything you need, you can count on me.
thank you.
Let's have some fun questions, okay?
For sure.
What's your pet peeves in the business?
Business. I hate it when people try to like befriend you and ask for something right away where instead of like actually building a relationship, and I think this happens a lot online, they'll slide into your DMs and they're like, hey, blah blah blah, can you do this? And I'm like, I don't know you, right? Like, and not taking the time. It's very like, I guess it's been very normalized. You're at a conference and people are like, here's my card, blah blah blah, what do you do? Versus I think online, like there is this space, especially online, to create relationships, right? And in general, even in business, like, whenever I meet people, I want to get to know, like, okay, who are you as a person? Because I'm very big on like, are you a good person? Like, do I want to help you even make money, right? Because if you're shady, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to help you.
Yeah,
I've done that for years. I don't want to do it anymore.
no, no, so
So
let me
that's my
ask
biggest
you.
pet peeve.
I like that. That's a business pet peeve. What's your pet peeves in society?
In society, I think the fact that we do emphasize work as our value. Like I understand like the money concept of it, but I think we're also there's that aspect where it's just like if you don't work, you're not valuable, right? And I think that also feeds into like the artistry, right? And folks that are starting small businesses thinking like, okay, they're not worth paying this much, right? Or this is not worth paying for a handcraft. Like so to see this, I made this. This is gonna be one of my next shops. I'm probably gonna launch in April. That took hours to do, right? And even as I'm doing, I was just like, wow, like artisans and folks that create this, and then we're trying to like hustle them as like, "Ugh, that should be like only a couple bucks, right?" You're not seeing all of the work that goes into it, but
Yeah,
also valuing it. Or, if you're an artist or a creative, thinking like, oh, I just deserve this for free, and not seeing like the work that they put into like writing something or producing something for content. So that really bothers me that we always try to like equate like what your salary is, and that's what you are worth as a person.
got it. I like that. Did you vote in this past election?
Of course I did.
I think it's important that the viewers watch this podcast and say, you know what, these are business minded folks, son Latinos, and they contribute to society because the biggest pet peeve of mine is when people complain about not being paid attention to. Well, when you vote, people will pay attention.
Yes, yes, I voted. I went out with my congressman to like door knock. We were trying to get as many people. I did as much like sharing like campaigns because I was like, this is like one of the few times that we actually get a voice, right? Where as
Yeah.
messed up as the system is, it's like, yes, but like we still need to try to make it better.
We learned to win this election, which is great. But also locally, right? Because a lot of businesses have
Yeah.
suffered because of the local elected officials, and so it's not just the presidential election; it's the local.
Right, your zoning restrictions, all of that. And my parents have their own business too, and that was kind of one of the reasons I was like, this is why it matters, because I was like, we have a bunch of property, like your zoning matters, like all of this, like this is why you have a say in everything.
Why I say be informed is so key for the
Hmm.
next voting term locally. All right, let's do this. The world is ending. What would be your last
I mean,
meal?
it kind of feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. So, what would be your last meal if the world was ending?
Oh, oh man. Oh, this is hard.
Told you, I'm gonna throw. You think it's gonna be a cookie cutter interview?
Oh man, I think that was the hardest question of all of them.
No, the next one's gonna
Oh,
be harder.
oh no. Okay, I'm trying to think. I've eaten such good food. Oh my God, I know exactly what it is. There is this place called La Alhambra in Madrid, and they have the best seafood lasagna that I've ever had. While I was there, I went back 3 times. Just all their food was delicious. But yeah, it was just the
White sauce,
best thing
red sauce.
ever.
Was it a white sauce or red sauce?
I think it was a white sauce.
Because you know me, I like to cook, so I'm gonna try to make it. Um, sounds really, really good.
It was just amazing. And like it was Spain, so they bring out like 3 courses and a bottle of wine. And I was like, what? And it was like $15. Like, but if you're ever in Madrid, La Alhambra in the Casa de Sol Plaza.
I'm gonna Google.
I'm obsessed with it.
I'm gonna
Every
Google
time
that.
I tell people, I'm like, this specific place, you need to go there.
No, you got to be that specific. It's those memories. I'm gonna Google that. Okay, last question. You ready?
Yes.
3 people that are alive that you can have dinner with. Who would it be?
Oh my God. Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. And oh man. Okay, who's my last person? Hmm. Oh, this one's hard. Oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Okay. And what would the conversation be with those 3 and you that night?
I don't know. I feel like we would really talk about just really like the meaning of life and right, because or just how we can mobilize people more. I've obviously, like, the Obamas are amazing. I've read both of their novels or their memoirs. And also we would definitely bond over Bali, and I'd be like, where was your favorite places? Like, I love
Yeah.
Bali, which sounds very pretentious right now. But I would definitely ask like Michelle how she really felt about like her husband, moving up and also dating her coworker essentially, or her intern. And Neil deGrasse, I would really ask him about what he thinks about like the mind and physics, because I think there's a lot that we aren't exploring or just haven't thought about, right? Like
Yeah.
how a lot of people think like energy, and I'm not very like woo woo kind of thing, but I do think there's something there, and it's like physics related, right? So I'm just curious about that, and I always love having these conversations. So that would definitely, and the multiverse, I would want to know more.
No, I
I've
like
also read a lot about his books.
those are, I've interviewed so many people, interesting people, and those are usually the questions I like the most because it ranges from people, and you can tell a lot by that answer from people. And it again, you're
Well, can
grounded.
you tell that I'm like a very massive nerd?
No, 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 no. No, I like everything I've heard today. I like what you have offer clients. I like how you're understanding of the industry, so you're a subject matter expert. The 2-year goal. Listen, the bottom line is the agencies that execute what you want are needed because of the fastest growing demographics are going to be Latinos anyways. And then we got to hear some fun stuff. You voted. You went out there and door knocked with your congressman. And then, of course, the dinner, your last meal, specific to Spain. For being so young, you're very specific on life experiences because what we do know is that tomorrow's never promised. And so you've lived and you're going to continue to live. So, anyways, with that being said, Joy, thank you so much. It's good to catch up. We're going to have
Yeah.
episode 2 and 3. And, wish you the best of luck. I'm going to kind of hit you up offline and catch up. But thank you for joining the show.
Yay! Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bebé, de nosotros quién va a hablar.